So, back buying lots of stuff off Eaglemoss again. Combination of discounts on the individual ships and an autumn discount led to me buying more than I intended to, as is often the way. So, I'm going to start this little batch with the USS Relativity. This is a Star Trek Voyager era ship. It's a deeply unusual design, which is why I decided to plump for it. Unusual in the sense that it's a curious colour for a Star Trek ship to start with, but also curious because it's not really a standard sort of Starfleet issue ship. And the reason being that it's actually operated by some guys who try and keep the timelines intact, basically. So this is a classic Trek timelines time travel episode, and it largely involves 7 of 9 being bounced around various timelines to try and stop Voyager's destruction at the hands of a chap who, spoiler alert, was a bit miffed at them. The unusual thing being that it was actually the captain of the ship that was sending them back to stop the destruction of the ship that he was causing. Okay, are you with me? No? Excellent. So basically, in a previous episode called Future's End, it was a two-parter in which the Doctor got his mobile emitter by virtue of getting access to some future technology. And the future technology actually came from a time ship, which was, ironically enough, sent back in time to try and prevent something that it actually caused. And this guy basically stole this future tech, equipped the Doctor with it, and the Doctor thereafter was able to move around outside the holodeck and could go wherever he wanted to, basically, which allowed him to play a larger part in stories going forward from that point. But in this episode, we have this rather curious scenario. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. We have this rather curious scenario of the captain from that episode being played by a completely different actor, which is quite confusing in the first place, but it's still Captain Braxton. And it turns out that the events of that Future's End episode then feed into this episode, because his time ship, his big time ship now, rather than it being a single-handed craft like it was first time round, has now been tasked with preventing the destruction of Voyager. But it turns out that the destruction of Voyager has actually been caused by a future version of him. So it's all very circular and all very confusing. But as you can see, that is a rather unique star, sort of Federation of Planets vessel. And it isn't really, and this stems from the 29th century, which it occurred to me when I was thinking about doing this video. It's quite interesting from a Star Trek Discovery point of view, because people aren't supposed to be messing around with the timeline anymore at that point. I think at this point the temporal walls should be done and dusted. So whether or not it's just a sort of mop-up crew kind of thing, I don't know. It was operated by the Temporal Integrity Commission, the TIC. So it's manned by Starfleet officers. There's a rather nice cover image of it. So it's manned by Starfleet officers, but it's not a normal Starfleet vessel. It actually carries a registry of NCV-474439-G. Apparently it's a Wells class ship, can't imagine why that is, and it is the 7th in its line, I guess. The thing with this is, because it's all so time based, we don't really know if it's the first, the second, if this is a 7th because the others are lost in time or whatever, but it's got a temporal warp core because it can have one, and it's basically just a very, very sexy looking ship. It reminds me a lot of the sort of more sort of curved lines that we saw, if I bring it a bit closer, the sort of curved lines that we see in the Star Trek Enterprise ships quite a lot of the time. It's slightly sort of Xindi aquatic looking, and I guess it was quite late on in Voyager's run, so their ability to do CG models like this was improving all the time. But it's quite a nice episode as well. We also get to see Utopia Planitia, in that episode with various ships under construction. I think Akira, Excelsior class, because it goes back to the start of Voyager. In fact, before the start of Voyager, where Voyager is actually still under construction, as part of his efforts to try and clobber it and remove it from the timeline. Because if he manages to do that, then a lot of problems that he's faced will go away. Basically, that's his thinking. So it's very much a sort of 7 of 9 episode, but obviously Janeway gets to play different versions of herself in it as well, which is quite interesting. Because although 7 is made to look human for the purposes of her covert mission, Janeway clocks that she's seen her before, basically. So it's it's quite a nice episode, nice little ship. I've got my storage bookcase, I suppose it is really, set up now, and I'm desperately trying to figure out how to arrange things on it because it's a bit bonkers. So for example, I've got a Borg cube, and I was going to put it into the sort of the Voyager shelf, because obviously we see a lot of the Borg in Voyager, but then I thought, well, technically we first see it in The Next Generation, and then I thought we actually see it in Deep Space Nine as well, in the emissary, in the pilot episode. And of course, arguably, you could say that we saw it as far back as prior to Enterprise. In fact, of course, the Borg, albeit not a cube, was in Enterprise. I mean, these guys get around. So I've got this problem with quite a few of the ships. Some of the Klingon ships are used right from the start of the original generation of movies, and we see them throughout in Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Next Gen. So it's trying to sort of align them in that sort of fashion turned out to be harder than I thought. So I might need to do it by species or something. I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll have to see how I get on with that. I'll do a video on that once I've unpacked this little lot, and then I'll see how populated all the shelves looking at that point, and do a little video off the back of that. So I'll leave this one there. As I say, look it up on the Voyager series. It's quite an interesting few episodes, and I better start unpacking the next one.